So I pumped this Suntour Shock up around November last year to 120 psi, and checked it about 2 weeks ago, and it had dropped down to 60, which means it's obviously losing air. And the only place it can really lose air is around this seal here. So I pumped it back up to 120, and it's been about 2 or 3 weeks, I think, since I last did it. So let me hook this up and we'll see what it's on now. So I've just screwed it in, and as you can see, we're down to more or less 100. So it's lost about 20 psi in a couple of weeks, so about 10 psi a week, and I don't want to have to keep topping it up. So I'm going to show you how to get a better seal and hopefully stop any further leaking. So first things I'm going to do is empty the cartridge of air. It's just a Schrader valve, so you can just, if you don't have one of these, just push your finger on it. Well, actually you're better off using a tool like a screwdriver to push the valve in, because you run the risk of oil shooting out at high psi, and that can get under your skin and cause massive swelling and all kinds of problems. If you don't believe me, look on Google for images of that. You're basically shooting oil directly into your blood, so it's not a good idea. So on this, you can just push this thing and it will go down slowly. So I'll just do that off camera and empty the whole thing of air. So as you can see, we're completely empty, and this is now sagging very low. So next I need to find a means to prop the bike up so this stays extended. So I'm going to have to pull out my service stand, bear with. So now that's taken the load off the front fork a little bit. Next is to unbolt this. So you could use an adjustable wrench or an open-ended wrench, but I'm going to use the socket just because I've got the right size, so I don't want to chew this up. So I'll just do that now. Using the trusty Halford's 200 piece set. For reference, it is a 27mm hex. Just like that. So let me get that undone. And what I will say is that it took absolutely no force whatsoever to undo. It felt like about 5 to 10 Newton meters, maybe not even that. So with that removed, you have the seal. So, and then inside there's a tiny bit of oil, which will be hard to show down there, but there is a tiny bit of oil. So basically what I'm going to do first is add about 10 milliliters of oil down there. The only purpose of the oil is to prevent air from leaking out. That's all it is. It's like a cushion or a barrier from stopping air getting past the oil and out through the threads in this seal. So I'm going to grab the oil now. I've also just compressed the fork, so you might be able to see just how much oil is in there from the factory, because this has never been apart before. Don't know if you'll be able to see that particularly well, but I'll just dip a finger in, maybe you'll see it a bit better. There's practically nothing in there, so you should ideally measure it out, but I'm just going to put about 10 milliliters of this Halford's gear oil here. I really don't think it matters. I'm going with 80 weight, but I'm pretty sure any kind of engine oil would work, because as I said before, the only purpose of the oil is to prevent air from escaping. That's all it does. Because behind this kind of plunger thing down here is grease, and it's the grease which is applied at the factory which keeps things running smooth. The oil in this chamber here isn't lubricating anything. It's purely just, as I said before, there to prevent air from escaping. So I'm not going to show, because I've only got one hand free, I'm not going to show myself pouring it in, but I'm literally going to do probably about a cap's worth of this stuff and then pour it in. So the lid actually has this handy tube, so I basically filled this tube up and poured it in. Roughly about 10 mil, maybe somewhere between 5 and 7, doesn't really matter. And you can see there, so I'm going to shake the handlebar, that's how much. This is with the fork compressed, by the way. It doesn't really matter if it's compressed or not. I mean, it does when you refill it with air, that's why it's on the stand, but that'll give you some idea of how much oil is in there. So the final step to further prevent any air escaping, as it could, past these seals, I'm just going to clean these up because there's a bit of metal swarf there, look, which must be from the factory because I've never opened this in my life. So, Suntour quality, I guess. Clean this up and then finally smear quite a generous amount of rubber grease on the seals. This is red rubber grease. I know you can't really see it because of that old sticker, but it's generic rubber grease, so ideal for this kind of application. Hydraulic brakes, clutch, suspension. Specifically says will prevent hardening and swelling of rubber seals, which is what we've got here, and can be used as a general lubricant. So whatever grease you use, just make sure it's compatible with all forms of rubber. This is obviously not going to be natural rubber because no seals really are these days. It'll be like a synthetic rubber, but it applies to that as well. I originally bought this for the slider pins on my car brake caliper. It's really good for that. Just those kinds of things whenever you're going to be working with rubber seals, especially on older vehicles like older motorbikes. The seals are going to be hardening up, so potentially get a bit more life out of them with this kind of stuff. So let me just clean this up and then apply the grease. So that's all done. As you can see here, a nice good coating of rubber grease, and I'm just going to pop this back in. I've already cleaned the mating threads on this side. You get the idea, and I'm going to tighten that to cruiser bra foot-pounds. In other words, not too much, not too little, just get a feel for it. So that's all done. It would actually be very hard to over tighten that and strip it out, because as you tighten it, it comes to quite an abrupt halt. And if you've been doing any kind of amateur mechanics for, I don't know, a year or more, you'll know that if you go any further than that, you're going to do damage. It's very obvious, like, when you should stop. There probably is a torque spec out there. Can't see one on the fork. Maybe on the Suntour website. I can't be bothered to check if you really want to be pedantic, but it feels fine to me. So I'm going to extend this back up and then pump it up to 120. So as you can see on here, about 125 to account for the small amount you lose when you undo it. Because it's such a high pressure, you lose a lot very quickly when you undo that. So yeah, hope this helps. Final things to do, just give the stanchions a bit of a wipe down. Mine are relatively clean anyway. And then if you have a zip tie here to check your like total compression, just pull that back down and you're good to go. So I hope this helps. So this should apply to most forks really, but in this case it's the Suntour XCR Air 32, I think it's called. Whatever comes stock on the Vitus Nucleus VRS. So, cheers. Oh yeah, these are very cheap. You can get them online for about 20 quid, so well worth having.